Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
All right, welcome to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and today we have with us Mr. Samuel Hill. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Tim. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So Samuel Hill, he's a product marketing director for Cyolo. I say that again? Say it again.
Nope. Cyolo.
Cyolo.
I mean, that's the best one I've heard. Yes. Yeah. Cyolo. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back with that one. That's good. Yeah.
Cyolo Security. All right. That's cool. Yeah. So Sam, actually, can I call you Sam?
I prefer Samuel.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. So Samuel, what does he do? You're specializing in critical device security, resilient IT strategy, and processes in integrity, right? You've got this background in an emergency room, which is interesting. We'll talk probably a little bit about that. You have a master's degree in administration and security or strategy leadership. And your passions here is helping organizations grow and protect themselves effectively in industries such as manufacturing, banking, financial services, insurance, and oil and gas. So anything you want to add to that, sir?
No, it's just awesome. I mean, the cybersecurity community is such a wide range and so diverse, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
Awesome. So, we usually talk about subjects that are all cybersecurity in your company. Tell us a little bit about what your company does and what you do on a day-to-day basis, and how does that fit in with your passions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for Cyolo Security. We're an Israeli-based cybersecurity startup, and we stop hackers from logging into your network. And we know the reality is that it doesn't take much for bad guys to compromise credentials and then use them to just access your systems. And we find that there are typically scenarios where that user access could cause enormous damage to the business, whether it's your manufacturing line, or it's DevOps environments, or key banking, key regulated information stores. We need to lock that down. We need to stop it, and we have an incredibly simple and powerful tool to give some control back to security operators for those scenarios.
Awesome. So I guess, and you coined this phrase, right? High risk is a thing, right? So I like that. It was catchy, so I decided to put that into the title here. So awesome. Yeah. With risk factors in today's company and industry, it seems as though that you hear it all over the news. The media exploits, another hacker's attack, another exploit for factors, and I don't know how serious companies really take it. So in your company, with this high risk factor, being applied, do you see trends in more uptake by corporations that you support at this high risk factor?
Yeah, I look at it this way, like it's such a unique combination of users, like risky users, and they could be all sorts of different types of users. They could be external contractors, they could be vendor technicians that are logging in to support your equipment. They could be your executives, because they really have the world's worst cybersecurity practices at times. Whatever those risky users, whoever they are, they're accessing critical things that are significantly important to your business. Yeah. And being able to kind of broker that connection and that access in a really secure and effective way is kind of where we see a lot of benefit. And unfortunately, there's a lot of security operators that don't know that there are tools available to help them with some of their riskiest scenarios. And, as a security leader, there are things that you have to do because the business is really driving towards that or demanding that from you as a security leader. We have to connect these people. We have to connect this system. The classic was, hey, the world is shut down, everybody's working from home, now we have to connect them. Yeah, and there were a lot of things that were done that, were maybe not to best practice. They were
rapidly.
Let's just survive, right?
Yeah.
And now we got to fix that. Now we got to go back and put some controls back in place that don't slow our users down, don't impede our business, because that's critically, we got to keep that moving, but add layers of control so that security can better manage what's really happening.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So And with that note, we're going to have to take a break, and we'll be right back from when we hear from our sponsors here. So we'll be right back.
Blockframe Technology offers next-generation blockchain managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
All right, welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and I have today with me a fantastic person, Mr. Samuel Hill. And before the break, we were talking about high-risk factors and access to, information for the system, information for the company, that risk factor implying to that type of information, and just how corporations may or may not be taking it so serious. I mean, can you give me an example, let's say, in your experience for, let's say one of the most, if you had a story of some kind that basically, when high risk, how did that play out? And, how did the company that you got, how did it come into play somewhere that really changed the mindset, the culture, idea of said corporation? So
our founder is a recovering CISO, is how he described himself. So he was in the Israeli Navy. He was the first CISO of the Israeli Navy. So he covered all the weapon systems and all the IT systems for the Navy, and then transitioned into private industry, leading the security team for a global manufacturing organization. And he had these users who were out of country for him, and they were contractors, but they needed to access key pieces in his manufacturing line.
Right.
And these contractors also worked for his competitors. And so you can think of like that. These people are really untrusted. Not only are they outside your company, they're in parts of the world that you don't natively trust.
Right.
And they're also working for your competitors. I mean, it's a trifecta of not awesome.
Yeah.
And
how do you play into that?
Right. So how do you control and put some safeguards around that access? And he likes to tell the story of, there's two types of things in a security incident that'll happen. If you're a CISO and you're preparing for a board meeting, you got a big presentation, you're getting all the things in a row, and if somebody walks in your preparation and says, "Boss, we got a problem, this has happened," you're going to do one of two things. You're going to either say, "That's not a problem." I mean, if our ticketing system goes down in IT, like, we can work around. Like, we're not stuck.
Right.
But if my manufacturing line goes down, you drop absolutely everything, and you are immediately leading that incident response and getting that thing up and running as quickly as possible. It's a cash machine in your business.
Yeah, it's critical.
And so
it's critical.
Got to keep it moving. Anything security does to help secure that has to also account for the criticality of the resource. We can't just block it. We can't just take it offline. We can't just, do things that maybe you might in other scenarios. So that's where we start seeing these companies that are taking this a bit more seriously, because they're realizing, hey, what we've done to date has kept us here, but it's not going to be what we need to exist in today's world. One of our large customers, they're a global packaged goods manufacturer. They are, I think, the largest snacking producing company in the world.
Wow. And
they make these cookies. Yeah. I was just actually eating them last night. They're double stuffed. I don't know why you would buy the single stuffed of these cookies. They have a double stuff, right? You rip them open, you dunk them in some milk, and they're delicious. If that production shuts down, we're talking about a global catastrophe, Tim. We cannot, right?
Yeah.
Cannot allow this to
without
happen.
these double stuffed cookies.
Come on.
Well,
right?
You can only imagine what the corporation thinks, because if that's their money market, their cash cow, they're stopping everything for that. So
their risky scenario was they had all these the people who make the equipment that make the cookies. They had these technicians that would be logging in remotely to whatever, maintain, upgrade, data telemetry, whatever that stuff is.
Yeah.
And they had very little control over that access. So you mean to tell me somebody who doesn't work for me now can access the thing that keeps global cookie production functioning? I have no say about it? So that was their risk. That was they realized this, and they went on this journey, and they selected us because we had a pretty seamless tool that helped them to get their hands around it. So that to me is where companies are starting to realize the light bulb's coming on.
Yeah.
Wait, I can do something about this. And they're taking some pretty effective action, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think when in my experiences, I've seen where it's like once you've explained it to them, yeah, that light bulb. It's like, really? Yeah, really. I mean, if you guys do some of these, when we talk about passwords and the use of passwords, and then you talk about phishing and the use of how phishing comes into play, and the cultural factors that apply to it. I mean, we usually do these little 2.5-minute training videos, and all it does is pitch a small scenario. And so, the phishing idea, and then the compromising of a password. And passwords, I don't know if they'll ever go away, truly, but they're there, and they're because humans are involved, and the necessity for security value. I think they're going to be there for a very long time, even though we have multiple layers for authentication. I just think that the facts are, but you just see that light bulb going on. And in my opinion, I'm thinking in my mind, as a security professional, I'm like, you guys didn't, how long has this been around? And then the cultural factors in implying to it, right? So it gets me sometimes when I go in and I talk to people and they're like, hey, no, we didn't know we should be doing that. And it usually becomes a gotcha. So I always talk about cultural factors. Companies, trend, people, they run the business. So we need to understand people and really help them understand how security factors like this could, there's a tendency to say this is going to stop our operations. But I always want to incorporate that this is going to perfect your operations. So, and the difference between a 100% secure machine and one that isn't is the brick, and then one that seems to be in the wild, wild west. I always call it so, right? The WWW. So
WWW.
Yeah. So, I could see how, and in your opinion, high risk is. What is it really? You're really you've got players who literally just giving away everything with no access to all of it. And like your boss was talking about the competitors. That's another factor. So, in your opinion, do you see cultural changes? Do you have issues with specific companies? And what do you see? What does your company do to kind of help the trend? Not only tools, but it's the way we talk to them too, right?
Right. And I would say too, like a lot of times, the people who actually manage and operate like the critical resource, if it's a DevOps environment, they're not necessarily like IT or IT security professionals, or the folks that are running, like I said, a manufacturing plant or water distribution or whatever that is.
Yeah,
they're not ITIS people. They're not security people.
Right, they're not.
And that's not wrong, right? That's obviously the more brain power we have looking at problems from different angles, I think the better.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
diversity is key here. So
yeah, and I think but there's almost a language gap. I do not speak another foreign language fluently. I know enough to get in trouble in some countries.
Yeah, me too.
But there's this gap of understanding in a sense of they don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
And they look at a problem and see, this is the issue. Okay, forget manufacturing plant. Uptime and safety. Those are the issues, right?
Yeah, operational
anything
values.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else is really not as important to them, where if you talk to the ITIS people, they're like, oh no, security and efficiency, those are things that are much more important to them. And okay, approaching the problem in a way that kind of brings both of them to the table is generally helpful. Now, I'll say this to the chagrin of every salesperson ever, but it actually slows the project down if you do that. But I think it's a really good thing, because at the end of the day, the cultural transformation you're talking about is what's needed. I am seeing positive signs though. Clients are asking great questions.
Yeah.
They're bringing the right people to the table to have the honest conversations. And I think, as the security issues have bubbled up to executive leadership teams, board leadership teams, like those folks that are, controlling money.
Yeah.
Now it's a thing. Now it's, okay, we actually have to do something about it. So now the brain power and the workforce can come together and start moving the ball forward a little bit.
Yeah, and I with cost factors, just in I guess in the last, with COVID coming in, and like you said, the trend to remote working and those things, they kind of had to shoot that. I mean, like a slingshot, like a roller
Right.
coaster ride too. And I could say that with my wife's hospital, they were very effective about being able to bring them home and still
Good.
operate with cost and security values in play. So I thought it was, it's critical for security to be in play, especially with remote services.
Right.
Do you get into companies where, I know in the past couple of years, these are cost factors. So
Yeah.
does your company get into really having to work through scenarios where these remote services have been cost beneficial? And what have been some of the outcomes for some of the things you've seen?
Yeah, and if you think about it too, especially in like a critical industry like or like power generation, oil and gas.
Yeah, utilities.
Right. Right. You think about these sites and the distribution of their sites. I mean, if you're talking about like an oil rig in the North Atlantic,
Yeah.
let's
remote.
fly a technician there in the middle of winter
Yeah.
and like have them log into this one specific thing
Yeah.
to whatever. That's highly costly. I mean, that costs an enormous amount of money. Versus, okay, let's enable a secure remote connection for that technician, and then they can, service 25, 30 in a day versus, 25, 30 in a week.
Yeah.
And now we've saved a lot of money. We've made life a lot better, and they're not having to fly to the North Atlantic in the middle of winter, which, from all that I've heard, is fairly inhospitable. It's not a super fun place to be.
Yeah.
All that, So there's this kind of cost savings, right?
Yeah, the flight itself is just expensive, let alone paying the technician to fly there, right? So
Correct,
I
yeah.
worked for oil and gas industry for a short period of time, and we would do remote services for real time and oil, water, gas, you name it. So yeah, definitely cost
You understand how
beneficial for the
distributed
remote.
it is, right? Like
Yep.
they're everywhere, right?
Right.
You've got an oil head in the middle of West Texas somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
out in the
everywhere.
middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but so all that to say, like, and then even in companies, and obviously there's this debate, return to office, work from home. There's a cultural clash happening, and we'll see where that lands. But ultimately, it is generally more efficient for people to work from home, and they can kind of maintain that productivity, at least in my opinion. And so, as long as you can do that in a way that enables them while securing your business, it doesn't create really unnecessary or outside the box ways of doing work.
Yeah.
Because the thing is like, users will find a way around. Like, they will absolutely find a way around any security control that actually gets in the way of them doing their job.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're malicious, right? They're just trying to
do their job better.
They have deadlines.
Yeah.
They have projects. They have all these things, right?
Being
Just like
trying to
us.
be productive, right?
Yeah. So the best security tools are the ones that users can actually use, and also give security some control too.
Yeah, and the cultural factor, blending and integrating security measures into something you do every day is definitely a must. And the tool has to work that way too. So,
Right.
yeah. And high risk, I mean, with remote services, I don't know, what kind of high risk values do you see? I know with, like you said, the gas and oil industry, I mean, it's dynamic, it's a cost saver to get that remote service to be able to point to something. I know there's always, with all things, there's always errors and things.
Sure.
But the high risk factor, and how does that trend? So, I mean, with the constant concept of this being remote services. So,
Right.
what are some of the high risk factors did you see?
Well, I think if you think about oil and gas, I mean, there are a lot of third parties and contractors that are operating, at all levels of the stream, like up, mid, down, distribution, all the places. And if you're an oil and gas company, you do not have control of that third party's device, of their endpoint.
Right.
You can't put agents on it. You can't put any kind of scan. You can't do that kind of stuff because it's not yours. It's, you might be able to ask, whatever.
Right.
But odds are you have zero trust in that device. Like, you have no confidence that device you just have to assume it is very unhealthy. And so now that device is connecting into a critical piece that's controlling the flow of wherever it is on the stream of stuff. So how do you manage? That's the high risk. And so, you might say, yep, I absolutely approve Tim. He needs to come in and run this change. And it's a totally normal thing that he's doing this, but I can't trust Tim's device. I might trust him. I might like him, but I really can't trust this whole scenario.
Yeah.
And what do you do in that situation? And a lot of times, unfortunately, they've had to kind of accept it, or they build some workaround, or they say, hey, we'll just give them a VPN tunnel. And
Yeah, VPN is the key. Well, it's always
but
the
I mean,
answer.
It's been the answer, right? But at the end of the day, I would describe VPN as like just a secure tunnel to transmit malware. So great,
Yeah. Malware
right?
gets inside the tunnel and it's over. So
right. What are you going to do about it, right? So again, the device has to be. So we've got to be able to add some layers to that, and I would say, let's not use VPN anymore if we can avoid it. Let's find better ways to provide this connection.
yeah.
So that's the level of risk. And again, every company's going to have to weigh it out in their own risk matrix. They got to look at it and say, now, if your system is down, like you're going to accept a ton of risk to get that system back up, right? That's just the reality of it. But the more we can do on the front end when there's not an emergency to provide some connectivity and controls, I think the better off we're going to be when that bad thing does actually happen.
Yeah, you're right. I think you are. So we're going to go ahead and take a break here, Samuel. And we'll be right back hearing from our sponsors. So.
Blockframe Technology offers next-generation blockchain managed trust and security. Unique non-fungible tokens are used to secure software bills of materials to provide data quality and security for every transaction in your supply chain. Deploy advanced peer-to-peer product security, scale zero trust capability to millions of IoT devices, allow vendor tracking and accountability, and rapidly reset from compromise. Unchangeable, time-sequenced blockchain data provides next-generation security using machine learning trust algorithms and audit analytics. Start securing your supply chain today by contacting Blockframe at www.blockframetech.com.
Okay, welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. I'm your host, Tim Montgomery, and today I'm here speaking with Mr. Samuel Hill. And we were referring to the high risk value of things, and in his company he does do a lot of evaluations for a lot of different parts of the industry and markets out there to really project an idea for encompassing and integrating security. And before the break we were really referring to some of these ideas of how we integrate this type of security, and you always hear the trending word zero trust. I know the government's got a big initiative, and just this concept of securing everything at every level. And I think I'm referring to the OSI layers there, more or less. And they have these different pillars, and they talk about devices and all the above. And then you got the idea of bring your own device, right, BOD. So in your experiences, especially in certain types of industries, do you see clashing between the two concepts a lot, or are there trends moving in with this zero trust? I mean, what plays out the most? Is it that one side or the other? Because like the Internet of Things is another concept, especially with utilities coming into play. And so my friend Chris Gorog, he runs a business called Blockframe, and it does blockchain. So we do heavy things in blockchain development. So I mean, these are trendy techie words coming. So I mean, where's the future of this concept going? So
I like to think of zero trust I like to make it hopefully a little bit more simple, because it's such a buzzword, right? Everybody's. I've walked around like trade shows and like just taking a picture of every booth that says zero trust in it.
Yeah, it is one of those things where this just seems to be a buzzword now. So.
And I think that's like, okay, cool. Zero trust. I think all of us can get behind the concepts of it. And really, it's really conceptually very simple. I mean, it's hard to implement, hard to do, but conceptually simple, right? Let's evaluate and authorize everyone who's connecting, right? Let's limit what they can connect to only what's necessary. Then let's keep an eye on it. Let's monitor it. Like those kind of three statements, like authorize, limit, and monitor, like it's kind of simple conceptually. Again, not implementation wise. Please don't mishear me.
Yeah.
But if we break it down to that level, I think we all agree on that. Like I think everyone as a security professional would say, yeah, absolutely, that's the level of control that I would actually want.
Right.
And especially when you combine that with, something that does not make that security leader feel comfortable in general. Okay, if you're not comfortable with it, then start at the basics. Okay, how do we authorize? How do we limit? And how do we monitor? Those are the things that you can begin asking questions, and it might guide your strategy about how you better manage it. So it is encouraging to see, CISA putting out their zero trust maturity model things and kind of moving forward the idea conceptually. As with anything coming out of CISA or any other government agencies, it'll all depend upon The carrot and the stick. How do you best, encourage and enforce?
Yeah.
Those are the questions that I have. How
Yeah.
flexible will it be really? Because if you say, hey, we have to do this today, well, 3 months from now, that might actually be the worst thing you could possibly be doing in the cyberspace. So
No, you're right.
those are the questions I always have.
Yeah, the maturity level of it's methodical, right? So as this idea of zero trust comes out, so I actually had a person on the show that was talking about actually encrypting the file itself, the transport itself, different layers making encryption possible, not only for the device but every other layer, and using zero trust as a complementer to the such things to integrate it into security. But then you get these, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly using my phone to do the multi-factor access. Now, is that truly secure anymore? I mean, the concept, and you're right. So 3 months down the road, are we going to have another issue?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so how does that lower, like, the concept of high risk? I mean, does that really imply, or we end up with another issue? So how does that function?
So if we're looking at like a high risk scenario, and the reason it's risky, I would argue, is because the security team doesn't have the level of detail or control that they might want. Otherwise, it's not as risky. Like, great, okay, cool. We can enable this connection. We've got all these things in place. I mean, if you're thinking about it, like a person who uses multi-factor authentication from a corporate domain machine that's connecting to ServiceNow, right? That's not super risky, right? I mean, really, it's not like, that's not going to put a bee in the bonnet of most CISOs. Maybe it does. Who knows? Maybe there's specific mitigating things that are happening there. But, an external contractor who is on a temporary basis using God knows what machine from who knows where they are in the world, connecting to your DevOps environment, like, no, that's something that might keep a CISO up at night. To borrow a well-used phrase, what keeps you up at night?
Right.
So the reason that's risky is because they don't have the level of control that they probably would want to better manage that situation. And so that's the way I look at it. I think zero trust can be helpful because it might give you a path towards identifying where are the controls that I need. What am I lacking? What is the team lacking, or tools and process? What are those things that are missing that I need to have better control over the scenario so that the risk can come down? So I don't think of it necessarily as like a real direct thing. It's more of like can help us guide the decision-making process in some ways to best strategize. Because obviously, no one's budget is unlimited, right? None of us have. So you got to pick, where can I make the most impact in a short period of time? Yeah,
normally, and you trend that over a few years, because it's not like we can go ahead and just go to the money tree and pluck it all off and use it, right? So, usually you have to trend this, so it means the projects will trend, implying in phases, which I think the way the government, CISA, they actually, that is their motto. They really want to see phases of this approach. They want to see where people are already. Does your company actually deploy some of these factors now, or is there a plan to do things like this? I mean,
we can support many of the pillars in the CISA framework, and we have some documentation on our website that kind of points to some of that. Obviously, any security tool that says that they are the comprehensive solution to all of the things, they're lying. We can help you with a great portion of them, and obviously in an entire security strategy, you'll be able to start achieving that. But it is encouraging. And Director Easterly just recently was talking about, we want to help kind of organizations from like the smaller, medium size that may not have, great cybersecurity budgets. We want to help them. We want to help them also, keep pace, because that's a significant thing. Yeah. I don't know, you may have read they did a profile on like the Walmart Cybersecurity Operations Command.
Yeah.
It was just a fascinating read. I mean, just the level of support they can provide with the resources of, a global company like Walmart. I'm like, that's fantastic, but I'm like, don't try and emulate that. Like, no small company can emulate all the skill sets that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for smaller companies to trend to it. I know that, there are certain state level events, resources that small companies within those states they'll support, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. I spent a long stint in the National Guard, and it was amazing to me now how when breaches do occur, you can actually call the National Guard in the state to, gain support, especially if you are a part of the business associations here, the small business associations. They've applied certain resources and funding in this state, in the state of Colorado, to actually support certain things for small businesses that involve the National Guard, out of all people. And they've got a good community, and they've got a good operation base, of course. And this would be considered, some type of crisis measure. So I could see how it applies to it. So, and I don't, in consideration for high risk factors here, does your company actually do, imply certain measures like that for small businesses? And how does that trend in small businesses for you and your company?
Yeah, so we typically see companies that have a smaller size and scope. They're usually, it's almost like some of them, they know exactly where to start. Some of them know exactly what they need to accomplish. Others are, I have this nagging thing in the pit of my stomach around this specific area. Let's think this through together. Let's come up with a plan to make it better.
Yeah.
That's typically what we have found. But a lot of them are, again, they're all understaffed. I mean, every cyber team is understaffed.
Yeah,
they're all,
seems like
under budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so it's a matter of what can you do as a force multiplier to augment what's happening there. So we have had quite a number of small businesses that are turning to us to say, hey, we need to deploy some of this to kind of take care of these really big, crazy things so that we can be in a steady state there and then keep it moving.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, it sounds like your company's trying to cover all the angles, integrate as much as possible. Cultural factors are always, a measure to imply. High risk values. It's amazing to see still today what high risk is. Still, same. Yeah, it's crazy to say that when we've been at this for decades now, and it seems like, I don't know. I always think that just when you think the culture's trending, which it is, it's just slower pace, I think, and business grows. So, anyway, any last comments? We're going to end here. Anything for your company that you want to say about it?
Yeah, no, I appreciated having the opportunity to chat, Tim. It's been a really fun conversation. I think that there are a lot of considerations that cyber leaders are having to evaluate today. And a lot of them are competing values in some ways. Like a lot of times they're making budget decisions or staff decisions based off of, the best available information in the moment.
Yeah.
And so I think I would say is, if you're a cyber leader in the space, one, thank you. Thank you for staying in the fight. Thank you for continuing to do what you do.
Yeah.
And, take care of yourself. Whatever that self-care thing for you is. Please do it. We need you to remain. We need you to help inspire the next generation of cybersecurity leaders who are coming up and coming through the ranks. And, I would also say, you're right. We have been doing this a long time. I mean, how long has the RSA conference been going on, and how many show floors you walk around there and get pitched the latest trend of something or other? Yeah. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box. If a problem looks like, I should solve this with this tool, don't be afraid to also think, what else is new and weird and exciting or different, or let your own thinking and your own paradigms be challenged, because that's what our cyber adversaries, the cyber criminals, are doing. They're not looking at it in a static, direct way, and they're not looking at it from a programmatic or